As photos of the socks Colin Kaepernick wore in training camp showing pigs wearing police hats became a hot topic yesterday, Kaepernick posted an explanation for the socks that offended police on his Instagram page. Then last night, Cap chose to kneel with the teammate during the national anthem as opposed to sitting like he did in week 3 of the preseason. Cap also announced after the game that he will be donating $1 million to help social causes. Darren Woodson, good to see you now here with us.
Yeah, thank you.
I heard about all this when you guys were on NFL Live discussing it yesterday, but now that you heard he's donating, et cetera, how do you view Kaepernick?
You know, listen, I can't, and I got to put this out there. I come from a military background. Father was in the military. My brother was in the military. My 4 uncles were all in the military. I own a company that helps the military veterans who are coming back from action with jobs. So when I first heard that he sat, my knee-jerk reaction was, like anyone else's, why? And it wasn't until I heard the sound and saw him at his locker and how he spoke with knowledge, he spoke eloquently about oppression and his message. And I thought his message was right on point because I am from a military background, but I'm also from the inner city, and I understand the message that he said. And I absolutely supported that message 100%. And I felt like he has the right, as an American citizen, to make those statements. And at the same time, I thought, you know, that's all great. But then yesterday, I see the socks on NFL Live. We're sitting there, we see the socks. And at that point, he lost me. He really did, simply because he made a blanket statement by wearing those socks. And I know he came back out and said some things afterwards to defend his stance. But at the same time, the perception, and we saw the reaction from the police departments around the country of how they felt about it. But the perception initially was out there, and then he had to come back and defend himself all over again. And that's where he lost me in his message. And I think, and one thing about it, again, the message is right on point, but he can't have all these other distractions that go along with his message because it clouds and muddies the waters right now. And I think that's the shame of all this.
I don't think that the socks, now in retrospect that he's explained himself, are indicative of a guy who hates the country that he lives in. However, it could easily be interpreted that way. But I do think that he was very angry at circumstances involving police brutality toward people of color. And he let the anger get the better of him. And the socks were a way of name-calling. And as you mature, and I'm prone to do this, when I get angry at somebody, I name-call. I'll even do, you know, a GM is stupid or something, or something like that. Because when you get angry about something, you know, anger is a re-empowering emotion. You feel helpless, so you get angry. It empowers you. And it's an immature impulse to start name-calling, but it feels good in the moment. So it probably felt good for him to put on those socks and name-call in that way. And then when he was outed for it, in light of this, retroactively outed for it, I think he through this kind of public discourse, has become more enlightened, has gotten control of his anger, is harnessing it in more constructive ways, is now seemingly embarrassed by it, and has made clear what his message was. Whether or not that was, in fact, his message at the time, I believe that is his message now. And the fact that, and so as I explained earlier, in a Western liberal democracy, there is such a thing called, and it's important to the health of our republic, is the loyal opposition. So that person loves their country, but so they want to change it. They may not agree with you about how they should change it or in what specific way it should change, but we accept that both sides of an issue have the best intentions at heart. And what Kaepernick has since come out and explicitly stated is, if you don't agree with me, understand, I am the loyal opposition, and that's important for a healthy America.
Here's my problem, Max Kellerman, with your position. And it's similar to my problem with Colin Kaepernick's position. You just went and broke down brilliantly and eloquently how things are supposed to look, because you highlighted stuff in sequence and you said this is what he meant. And being the intellectual that you are, you explained it. Darren, you'll probably side with me with this. Molly, you might. But here's the deal, Max. Everything you just broke down is not how people break it down most of the time. And that's the problem. And what I'm saying to you is that you're quick to bring up optics, all right? And you're usually right. Because when you bring up optics, that's the issue here. Let's look at this. Colin Kaepernick is wearing these socks. Fellas, he wore the socks before the protest.
Yep.
But it's become news after the protest. So the media find a way to subliminally manipulate the minds and hearts of millions of Americans out there who would already be against Colin Kaepernick because of his refusal to stand for the national anthem. And this supplements or substantiates their points and couples on top of what people are already ticked off about. So it builds the vitriol against him. As a result, it forces other people who support him in his right to do what he did to dig in even deeper in support of him. And what do you have? A divide, an ocean wide, because of how things are being manipulated. It's that simple. Colin Kaepernick wore the socks days ago, long before the protest. We didn't hear about it then. We've been doing this show every day. I didn't hear about the socks till yesterday. But he protested, refusing to stand for the national anthem last Friday. And even then they said that wasn't the first time. And so where is it? You got to think about things in chronological order the way it's supposed to go down. But then the way it does go down, that's not necessarily how it's conveyed to us. And then all of a sudden everybody's reacting to it.
Agreed.
In the end, yeah. I'm saying, and because you agree, in the end, what it comes down to is if you're going to make a statement, Colin Kaepernick has to know that. You have to know how those things could go down. And giving a press conference afterwards to explain yourself ain't gonna cut it. When we saw Eric Garner in the eyes of African Americans in this country, Eric Garner was choked by cops, choked to death. What happened in the aftermath of that? 2 officers were gunned down brutally. I believe it was in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy. I don't remember where, but it was somewhere there. I'm saying to you, these kind of actions that take place when you got pigs as cops on your socks, do you understand subliminally what kind of message that's
I think
sending?
not only do I understand, Stephen A., and your point is well taken. I appreciate the point. I think Kaepernick now understands. Now that he is in the middle of the firestorm and he is a public figure, I think we are watching his position evolve and mature very quickly. I think he understands. He's even said so. My point is getting lost. It distracts from the point. It's another way of saying when you name call, which is essentially a severe form of that, his socks, your point gets obliterated by the name call. It's like you're lobbing a bomb in there, and he doesn't want to do that, which is why when Nate Boyer spoke to him, hey, how about maybe kneeling during the national anthem? Right. That way you can be with your team, you can show support for the military and all that, and make your point more specific for people and get people back on message. Kaepernick agreed to that, feeling he could live with his conscience and not sell out his ideals, but also show people, okay, maybe my position is evolving, or maybe I didn't articulate it well enough, but let me be more specific about what I stand for. You're right about the optics, Stephen A. I believe he's trying to address that now.
Yeah, and I think you're sure, like you said, he's maturing through this process. And also, the donation yesterday spoke volumes. And when you hear after the game him wanting to donate, yeah. I mean, we do a lot of talking, but we never see guys actually put their money where their mouth is. Kaepernick went out and did that and is going to do that. And what we saw yesterday also was the support of his teammates. Eric Reed sitting with him. After that, he stood up and everyone's giving him hugs. The team was trying to support Colin Kaepernick. And I understand the ownership and Chip Kelly, they want to keep all this in a box. They're trying to avoid all the distractions. But it's there. It's alive right now. And the message, if he could continue to do it the right way, the message is there, and he can build on this.
What Nate Boyer and Colin Kaepernick did yesterday was a beautiful thing. Yeah. If you read the story, how can you not be proud to be American? Of course, you're proud to be, but especially in that moment. Yeah. That doesn't happen in North Korea. That happens in the United States of America, where there's a public discourse. Absolutely. People are angry. There's misunderstanding on both sides. There are statements made out of anger, political statements sometimes. There are hurt feelings. But if Americans of goodwill and good faith actually come together to talk about it, as Nate Boyer, who penned the open letter to Kaepernick, and Kaepernick, who received it and invited him to talk about it, we get progress oftentimes. That's something that doesn't happen all over the world, but it happens here. And Stephen A., it speaks to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's point that the real un-American issue here is the persistence of the problems that Kaepernick is protesting. And if you believe in American exceptionalism and American optimism, you know that we always believe there's a solution to every problem. Also not the case all over the world. And Kaepernick and Boyer here, who joined him, are an example of that. It makes you proud.
Yeah.
Will you stop? Stop it. The visual. Ray Rice committed what he committed. Greg Hardy did something just as egregious, if not more so. Greg Hardy was back in the league. Ray Rice still can't find himself in the league. Everybody you talk to talks to the visual. Y'all are talking statements. You are talking causes. You are talking intent. All of those things are to be honorable. But when you leave residue to be criticized from a visual perspective, it is far more profound. You know why? Because people don't have time to read all the time. They don't have time to educate themselves all the time. They don't have time to sit up there and intellectualize and edify themselves. What they do is go by what they see. They get a flashpoint and they run with it. So Colin Kaepernick wearing those socks is an ingredient for them to utilize to say, hey, that's what we saw. That's all that matters to us. They don't even know what the hell
So what
we're
do you want him to?
about.
You're right about
They
that.
have
So
no
what does he
clue.
do? He can't. He doesn't have a time machine to go back and change anything. All he can do is deal
Well,
with
that's all I'm
the
saying.
president. So what can he do
But
now?
that's what we're
He's doing
saying.
what he can.
But that's
He
what we're
changed the
talking about.
optics. He
That's what
kneeled
we're
instead of
talking
sat.
about.
Yeah.
But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about what he did. We're talking about the impact of what he did and what kind of residue is going to leave for that. You talking about what should happen.
No, I'm talking about what happened
We all
yesterday.
know that.
The socks and even the T-shirt with Castro and Malcolm X. But, you know, I checked especially the Castro's depiction there. That was in the more distant past. The most recent past was yesterday, where he played very well, by the way, where his teammates seemed to rally around him. His offensive line played for him, the whole thing. And where the optics were, to address your point, Stephen A., that he talked to a former Green Beret and decided to take a knee during the national anthem and salute our troops. He is trying to change the optics, in his words, to get people back on message. I don't know what else he can do.
There's nothing else he can do. Just continue to march forward, doing what he's been doing, highlighting his intent. But as we were discussing when Darren Woodson sat up there and said, he lost me with the socks. Well, how many people are going to go and continue to delve into the story the way Darren Woodson did?
Yeah,
They're not going to do it.
They're not, and that's the problem. And that's the shame in all this, is that
And that's
no
the
one's
problem.
going. Yeah, that is a problem. But I agree with what Max is saying. He's growing in this process. I mean, this is a process that he has to go. And what you said, right? You're right. You're going back on this. This happened. The socks happened weeks ago, and now we're bringing it back up. Now the media spin is that we're bringing it back up. But all we can do is see what he's doing and the progress that he's trying to personally make on his own, whether it be growing through this, donating his time and his resources, giving back to the community. That's all we can do. Right now, the message has to start basically all over again for Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, I don't know what to add over that. I find this a very
There's
interesting
nothing else to
time.
add.
I find it a
There's
very
nothing else to
interesting
add.
time to be alive and watching this stuff take place. I think the end point is unpredictable. The ramifications on the league. What happens? Do more players take a knee? You know, where do we go from here? This is all interesting. It's not predictable, and it's an interesting time as a sports fan to be watching.
Donating
You
his
find
money
it interesting.
and
You find it interesting. I'm a black man. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Because it gets tiring, Max.
Yeah, I hear you,
can't
but
tell you.
don't get tired
Darren,
now.
am
They're
I
making
lying?
progress.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
right.
Dan,
So right.
ain't you tired?
Yeah, I'm tired, man.
It's
You're
tiring.
right. Yes.
I'm
Absolutely.
tired. I'm tired.
Absolutely.
And I'm on the show. I'm damn tired.
Okay.